Good morning. Welcome to the House of Switzerland and welcome to the annual breakfast of the Davos Baukultur Alliance. My name is Jeff Merritt. I am the head of urban transformation, a member of the executive committee at the World Economic Forum, and I am so happy to welcome you all here this morning. This is a very special group of people here today. If you open up the newspapers, you look at the TV, our planet is suffering. Our people are hurting. Whether it's the floods in Valencia, the fires in Los Angeles, whether it's the humanitarian crisis in Gaza or the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, there's a lot of challenges out here. But the good news is that all of you are a critical part of the solution. Perhaps the critical part of the solution. If I quote one of our partners at the forum earlier this week, he called all of you the doctors of the planet. And that's not just sort of nice words. Think about that. These challenges that we face today are immense, but the solution is right here in the room. Those of you that are rethinking models of financing and investing new infrastructure, you're thinking about new ways to design communities, new visions for our city, new ways to function our transport, to create buildings that are vibrant and ultimately communities that are places that we don't just want to live and work, but we want to raise our children. We want to leave behind for a future generation. And just like doctors have a Hippocratic oath, something that guides them in their work, we too have a guiding set of principles. And we call those the principles of high quality Baukultur. And you're going to hear from my colleague from the Swiss government who's going to talk a little bit more about this and explain what that means. But it's a real set of kind of holistic values and principles for how we create the future of our planet, the future of our communities that we can be proud of, can be left behind for generations. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce the chair of our Davos Baukultur Alliance, Oliver Martin, with the government of Switzerland. Oliver?
Thank you, Jeff. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, it's also my big pleasure, my very big pleasure, to welcome you to this Baukultur Breakfast as chair of the Alliance. It has been 2 years now that this alliance has been launched here in Davos to strengthen the cooperation between the private sector, the business, the public authorities, and the civil society for better building. High quality Baukultur is our goal. And what is Baukultur? Baukultur is somehow the expression of how a society plans and builds. And high quality Baukultur means that a lot of care is done for planning and building. And this concept has been launched a couple of years before with the Davos Declaration, also here in Davos. And this is as Jeff said, our baseline, our principle for this alliance. The alliance is now working on 4 major topics. These are the big themes: climate adaptation, affordability, social values, circular economy, and also rebuilding of Ukraine. And these big topics, many different institutions, our bodies are having that high on their agenda. But what sets the alliance apart is the fact that we always link it back to this goal of achievement of high quality, of a comprehensive, transversal, multi-sectorial quality that we want to link to all these different aspects and objectives that we have as a society, that we must have as a society. And when we say quality, so we can precisely define what we mean. These are the 8 quality criteria that stem from the Davos Baukultur quality system. If a place fulfills and considers these 8 criteria, from good governance to beauty, then you can be pretty sure that it is of high quality and that it provides high quality of life. this Davos Baukultur quality system and these 8 criteria have now proven to be practically and suitable for practically application and to be robust. And I dare say that there's probably nothing better outside right now for defining, explaining, debating, and also measuring high quality of a place. You have seen that I was playing around with numbers, 2, 4, 8, and now it's not 16, it's roughly $16 trillion. This is the global market of construction these years. And these numbers show also that there is not only challenge and difficulty, but also a huge potential to improve our living space. 9.8 trillion is the global spending for health. Our environment, our space, our living space is impacting our health very much in a very direct way when it comes to safety and shelter and materials, substances around us, but also in an indirect way when it comes to mental health and our well-being. So now there is evidence that high-quality Baukultur improves the public health also. 31 trillion of US dollars is the risk of disruption from nature loss, and this is pretty much half of the GDP of all cities in the world. This means that we have to integrate nature in our planning and building. We have to reconsider the cultural and natural linkages, and we have to reconsider ourselves as being part of nature and not offset. And this means that these factors are integrated in Baukultur, and they help to contribute not only in an altruistic manner, but also in a very economic sense to improve the situation. The concern for better quality, for social values, is growing, and it is recognized that today I think that this is not just a nice to have, but an urgent need. And in many places, public authorities, businesses find together for public-private partnerships, together also with civil society, to innovate, to develop new models of planning, to develop new financial models to improve the space and the living space, like this example here in Malaysia. Our alliance is building up on these innovative practices and tries to distill the learnings and the knowledge to make it implemented in a broader way. Also, this is an example from Switzerland here, or another one from Africa. And of course, these places are all very specific, and they have specific needs, specific contexts, and may not be comparable one to the other. But we realize that high-quality Baukultur is kind of an universal answer to these regional and local needs and differences so that we can work together globally on this same concept. Today at this breakfast, we want to discuss these questions between costs and benefits. And as building is not a private matter, the costs and benefits are not only private either. So we have also to talk about external costs. And the goal of our alliance is to provide value, to provide individual private value, but also provide value for the common goal by a better building and planning. And I'm really looking forward to the debate today at this breakfast. I'm also proud that our alliance is close to 78 members now, all mixed from private, public, and civil society. These are organizations, institutions, businesses that care for our space, that commit to the Davos principles, and I want together, work together to improve the situation. And this is maybe the most important lessons, that only by cooperation, by new cooperation, we can really move forward. And this is often said. And of course, it is not always easy. It might be tiring also, and it might need efforts, but we think that it is worth the effort and that we do have to do that. So on behalf of the Davos Baukultur Alliance, on behalf of the Swiss government and also the forum, I thank you very much for being here, for your interest, for debating with us. And I'd like also to thank our very high-level speakers for their input, and looking very much forward to our discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oliver. I think even beyond the sort of logos that you saw on the screen there, what is most powerful about our growing base of members is that they touch every part of this planet. Every single country in the world, we have partners who are active, operating, working with governments, and that is incredibly powerful because the solutions of tomorrow don't just come from the big name countries, big cities of the world. They can come from anywhere, and oftentimes they come from the most unique places. And it is with great, great pleasure that we have one of those inspirational thinkers, leaders here today with us. Your Excellency, it is my pleasure to invite you up here to share some of the vision of what you're doing in Bhutan. I believe this type of new thinking, new ideas is critical. The challenges that we face are immense. The only way in which we can drive progress forward is by thinking out the box. And you are building on thousands of years of history and culture as a new way of shaping the future. And we say thank you, and we invite you to the stage. Your Excellency, the Prime Minister of Bhutan. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Good morning. So I'm from Bhutan, still an old country, an old culture, very small, in the Himalayas. Just 50 years ago, we were stuck in the medieval ages. A small country in the Himalayas, landlocked, China to the north, India to the south. Only 700,000 of us in an area of about 38,000 square kilometers. All mountains, from the high Himalayas up north to the foothills of the Himalayas in the south, which merges with the plains of India in the south and the Tibetan plateau in the north. Just 50 years ago, we were stuck in the medieval ages when a young king was enthroned. He was barely 16 years old. We barely had our first motor road. We hardly had any schools, hardly had any hospitals. Life expectancy was barely 40 years old. 40 years. Literacy was appalling. We didn't have a modern economy to speak of. We had a barter economy. So the 16-year-old monarch developed our country over the next few decades, using a philosophy, a development philosophy of what he called gross national happiness. Very early on in his reign, he told Bhutan and the world, but especially to the Bhutanese, for Bhutan, gross national happiness is more important than gross national product. And he said, the very purpose of gross national happiness is to ensure the happiness and well-being of our people. That is the purpose of governance. And then he went on to implement the principles of gross national happiness and to develop the country. Gross national happiness which balances economic growth, which is a necessity. To balance economic growth with social progress, cultural preservation, environmental conservation, and good governance. As a result, during his reign, our economy grew slowly but steadily, but our economy is sustainable. Small but sustainable. We've made huge strides in the area of social progress. He ensured that education was completely free. Healthcare is totally free. As a result, in one generation from a medieval society, we have an educated people. In one generation, all our youth go to school, avail relatively high quality education, and that too in the English language, a global language. Literacy among our youth is now 99% in one generation. Life expectancy is 72 years now, in one generation. These are the advances he has made in social progress. The advances he has made in gross national happiness. And then there's culture. We are the custodians of an absolutely unique culture. One based on Vajrayana Buddhism. We are the only country in the world that practices this form of culture. in terms of environmental conservation, Bhutan is a carbon negative country. We were the first carbon negative country. We still are heavily negative. We sequester more than 3 times of greenhouse gases than we emit every year. And what's more, we export renewable energy that offsets carbon elsewhere in the region. More than half our country is protected as nature reserve, wildlife sanctuaries, and national parks. Our constitution requires that 60% of our country must be remained under forest cover, but in reality it is 70% that is under forest cover. This is why we are carbon negative. And in terms of governance, which is the core of gross national happiness, Bhutan is the only country where democracy was introduced in a time of peace and stability and harmony. What's more, democracy was designed and imposed by our monarch on a very reluctant people. So this is how Bhutan has emerged in the last 50 years from a medieval society to one that engages with the world. But here we are here today to talk about urban living spaces and the principles of Baukultur. I don't have a presentation. Jeff said I had a slide. I'll be very honest, I haven't seen the slide. I said, where did you get it from? He said, my office sent it. My office did not consult me. Okay. Jeff, please remember to show the slide at the end. But I don't have a slide because we are going to co-create my presentation. And I'm not very comfortable in large crowds, in front of crowds. I'm even less comfortable in front of a focused, small, intelligent crowd. So I'm going to do 2 things. 1, you're going to help me develop my presentation. And 2, because I'm not very comfortable, I'm going to request you to close your eyes as you create our presentation. Please close your eyes, and I want you to create Baukultur in Bhutan. His Majesty the King has announced the creation of the Gelifu Mindfulness City. This city is spread over 2,500 square kilometers of land. It is located along a border with India. The 2,500 square kilometers is 3 times the size of Singapore. As co-creators, you are going to develop this Gelifu Mindfulness City along the principles of Baukultur. 2,500 square kilometers of pristine land. Much of it is forest. This area is carbon negative. This city that you are designing and co-creating is already carbon negative. It has national parks. It is a biodiversity hotspot. It is a wildlife sanctuary. How will you develop your city? It is bookended by national parks and 2 mighty rivers. One of the rivers has the potential to generate 5,000 megawatts of clean renewable energy. But between the rivers, the land has the characteristics that is unique because there are 18 other waterways flowing through. Our land, our villages, and the forests. How would you develop your city? How would you ensure that it remains carbon negative and is sustainable? How would you ensure that the principles of Baukultur are imbibed in the city? How will you ensure that the unique culture is not only present there, but celebrated and our spirituality thrives there? How will you ensure that there's economic opportunities that are sustainable, and that there's innovation in the areas of health and well-being and longevity and education. How will you ensure that this city that you co-create is not just for Bhutan and her future, but is for the world and its future? The Gelufu Mindfulness City is being developed as a special administrative region. How will you ensure that the independence in governance, in lawmaking, and the judicial independence that you enjoy in your city will help the people who live there live in harmony with each other and add value to each other's lives, while also living in harmony with Mother Nature and the future of mankind? Okay, so you've done my presentation. You can open your eyes. Thank you. Okay. Keep this presentation in your mind. Keep this vision in your mind. Remember, 2,500 square kilometers. Remember, it's carbon negative. Remember, sustainable. Remember, timeless. Not just for now, but for the future. Not just for Bhutan, but for the world. I invite you to continue co-creating Gelufu Mindfulness City, this royal vision of His Majesty the King. Co-create the city with us. Come and join us in this journey as architects, as artists, as investors. Let's journey in this together. Jeff, let's see what you have for me. I haven't seen this, okay? So this is what Bjarke Ingels from Denmark, this is his conceptual work of the city, part of the city. If you want to see more, please go to YouTube. As in everything else, go to YouTube and search Gelufu Mindfulness City Project, and you may come across a 3-minute or a 4-minute clip on the Gelufu Mindfulness City. I'm here today. If you wish to discuss more about the city, I'm here today. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for co-creating the city with me.
Thank you, Your Excellency. This is what the Davos Baukultur Alliance is about. It is about envisioning a future that we all co-create together. And we know how to create that because it's in here, it's in our intellect, and it's in our hearts as well. And as we all work together, we have the ability not only to create these new cities, but also to reinvent, to reimagine the thousands of cities around the world here who also need to evolve for the future and also need to be ultimately anchored in places of mindfulness and places that we love and want to raise our children and pass along to the next generation. And it's my pleasure now to introduce someone who I've spent a lot of time with this week here in Davos, and I'm excited to do a lot more with. Ana-Claudia Rosbach is the Undersecretary General of the United Nations, Executive Director of UN Habitat, overseeing this broad space of how we revitalize, reimagine, and shape our futures across the planet. So, Ana-Claudia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, everyone. I first would like to thank you for the opportunity of being here. Jeff, the co-organizers, World Economic Forum, Davos Baukultur, the government of Switzerland, thank you very much. It's a great opportunity. It's my first World Economic Forum, by the way. So I just took this position 6 months ago and have been hitting the ground, not running, but jumping, and many things going on, right? We cannot wait longer. What I see, and Jeff made a great introduction for the world that we are living in. It's a world of conflict, it's a world of disasters, unfortunately, we still have prevalence of poverty in many countries, in many regions, and cities. Cities are our shelter, right? And in cities, we live in houses. And this is at the core mandate of UN Habitat. So my feeling is that we have to go fast, we have to be effective, and we have to walk with the right people, because mostly important, we cannot do it by yourself. So also my team, Prime Minister, prepared this presentation to me, and I'm very glad they did, because we can have some illustrations, and I'm incapable of co-creating at your level, but I'm very grateful by your exercise, because I'm feeling happy now after this introduction. Yeah. So I don't know if you all know, but our mandate at UN Habitat, we are the agency taking care of cities and communities, and we follow a commitment signed by member states in 2016, so almost 20 years ago in Quito, Ecuador, and it's called the New Urban Agenda. And the New Urban Agenda, I was thinking, Martin, when you presented the 8 elements, if all 8 elements of the Davos Baukultur would be there, and they are, except I don't know about beauty and happiness, Prime Minister. So maybe Bhutan can bring it to the next round of revision of the New Urban Agenda next year in 26, when we have to present a resolution to the General Assembly, this recommendation. But otherwise, everything else is there. We have to be respectful to the environment. We have to be inclusive. We have to be connected. We have to be resilient, right? And we have to respect the context and the culture. But also, the New Urban Agenda talks about leaving no one behind, talks about focusing on people, talks about housing at the center, talks about participatory multi-level governance, the importance of participation, the importance of working with the academia, the civil society, the private sector, and the importance of sharing the tasks among the different levels of the government. Of course, the big money, it's national, the laws, but the political direction, but it's locally where communities can come together with authorities and with stakeholders and define a vision for the cities, like you said, Jeff. This is an agreement that has to be done locally and nationally. The government needs to enable these agreements. And we all have to participate. The New Urban Agenda brings us the principle, the idea of co-responsibility. We are all responsible. There's another principle in the New Urban Agenda that not so many people talk about, but I would like to bring more into the light, which is the recognition of the social and ecological function of the land. And for me, I will come back to that later on, but it's a core aspect and it's a core foundation to achieve what the Baukultur expects. So I spoke about housing, and I said housing is at the center of the New Urban Agenda. Also, for my mandate, I have proposed to member states that we focus on access to housing, land, basic services, and slums transformations to all. So far, we have got endorsement and full support of all member states, but it still needs to be submitted to our assembly in May. But why we are proposing to focus on housing? Because right now, we have almost 3 billion people living in some sort of housing inadequacy. And we have more than 1 billion people living in situation of informality, lacking access to water, lacking access to proper sanitation. This doesn't make sense nowadays. This is not Baukultur. This is not the New Urban Agenda. We have about 300 million people in homelessness situation all over the world. We have hundreds of millions affected by wars and conflicts. And let's talk about disasters. We are all seeing what's happening. We had floodings in Brazil last year, floodings in Europe, floodings in Kenya. We have fires in Los Angeles right now. I opened the newspaper, new fires are starting. It's just unbelievable. And it's happening in all places. It's affecting our houses. So we still have a housing shortage. We already have a housing shortage. And we are actually leveraging our problem. So it's clearly a global housing crisis, and we need to tackle that. And to do that, following the new urban agenda, following the principles of the Baukultur, we have to maximize what we have, maximize the built environment, maximize and take opportunity of the places and infrastructure that we have already built. But we still need to build new, and we have to build new in respect to the nature, in respect to the culture, in respect to the social needs. But we also have to accept that we will eventually change, and the way we live will change in the future. So change regulations, change parameters. Maybe we can, have different types of densities, different types of cohabitation, different types of home ownership. And quality should be at the core of that, right? We have in our history the experience of social housing or housing for the poor being built in lower quality than in other places, in terms of building materials, in terms of location, in terms of what's in the surroundings. But this is not the way to go. So how can we overcome all the barriers that we have and make sure that all houses are of quality design and all houses are inserted in good planning? Is it easy? No, it's not easy. I'm an economist, and I know that we have many bottlenecks to achieve that. But just to address the role of land, because I mentioned before the social and ecological function of the land being at the new urban agenda, and I don't think we talk much when we talk about sustainability of building environment. We don't talk much about land. We talk a lot about building materials. So there will be other sessions where we can talk about that. I want to bring land. Why I want to bring land here? Because if we think about the challenge that we have, environment, costs, right, affordability, quality in terms of location, land is that intersection. It's the most expensive input for the housing value chain. So if we can, through regulation, through zoning, through comprehensive planning, establish some parameters, some zoning, some regulations to expand and to amplify the access of good located land for low-income housing, we are already cutting this cost significantly. And also, if we can have that, we can build for everybody in areas of the city that will enhance and will leverage opportunities to all equally. And mostly important, we will preserve the city to expand unnecessarily, because right now what's happening is that we are growing at least twice more in territory than in population. So we are affecting biodiversity, we are affecting the natural surroundings of our cities. Do we need that? How can we change that? Change of culture, change of mindset. There's no way out. We have to think about densities. We have to think about recycle. We have to think about reuse. So I think my time is over. I will stop now. But just to say that we are committed to this partnership, and we expect to keep going this path of this new strategic plan of UN Habitat together with you, to co-create, to research, to exchange practices, and see how we can overcome the gaps that we have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, when we created this alliance, it wasn't just about big, bold ideas and visions. It was about driving real action on the ground. And we got the inspiration from His Excellency. Ana Claudia has laid out our marching orders. And so next, it's my pleasure to bring to the stage Lisa Calvi. She's the head of infrastructure for KPMG, one of our partners here at the World Economic Forum. her team has been working closely with us to put in place the structures to really drive forward progress here. And so I'd love to invite up to the stage Lisa, as well as our speakers, Oliver, Your Excellency, Ana Claudia, to the stage for a discussion here. Lisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Wow, that's quite a lot of amazing act to follow this morning. We now have the opportunity to dive into some of the things that have been raised in a little bit more detail, and then we will come to you in the room as well for some of your perspectives. So let's just take a second to be ready. Maybe Ana Claudia, I'll come to you first, if that's okay. So we've heard about your holistic concept of Baukultur, and we heard from Oliver about the relationship between housing and construction and health. I know that your team's been doing some work on that. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about how we can use that relationship to really make the case for quality in our urban environments?
Sure. First of all, being here in spaces like this, I think it's very useful, because I do agree with Jeff when he says the solution is there. I think the solution is out there, but I think in our minds, the people here in this ground, we all carry a little bit of a piece of the solution, right? So I understand we already have the know-how. When I look at UN Habitat, for example, experience, and I was not part of UN Habitat, I just entered 6 months. I don't want to make false marketing, but it's a genuine assessment. When I look at the trajectory of UN Habitat, I see so many projects, so many tools, right? So many experiences where we develop know-how of, how to work with local national governments, with the civil society, how to convene. Governance is one of the principles, right? How to create an environment of governance and design projects of high quality and change policies and change laws and changing regulations. So we basically know what to do, but we still need to research a lot. I believe the urban sector is very much under-researched, so we need to research more. We need to have more data. For example, let's look at informal settlements, right? We need to improve the quality of data that we have there so that governments can use that as a public good to operate. And we have to, build consensus on the priorities and on the way to go, and exchange practices. As we don't have time properly to do all the research that we need before taking action, I believe exchanging of practices is a very good way to go, because we can accelerate horizontal learning and we can create a catalytic effect from the pilots and from the experiences that we have behind us. We don't have time for piloting anymore. We have to go massive.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Your Excellency, perhaps I'll come to you next. You painted a really compelling vision for us of your new city. Well, all of us, I think, have a wonderful vision in our heads. I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you're turning those plans into reality, and particularly how you're working with the private sector to make this vision happen.
Okay, so the idea is, it is our vision, and definitely not mine. It is a royal vision. It's driven by His Majesty the King. This area has already been identified. Like I mentioned, 2,500 square kilometers with forests and national parks and waterways, the wildlife sanctuaries, and they're all connected with biological corridors, and animals roam free, they have farms. And the question is how to integrate all of them to ensure that the ideals and principles of gross national happiness that I briefly outlined are planted in this place. One of the things about cities is that they take on a life of their own. Nobody really asks why this urban living space. They grow organically, and then it is market forces that drive how people live together. And it's not necessarily the best way for people to live together. And this is why Baukultur is important, because you are building cities with culture. building cities with a purpose. And this is why the Gelifu Mindfulness City is also important. How do you design a city from the ground up, from the get-go, with the objective of ensuring that you add value to the lives of people, that it is their happiness and well-being that is the overall objective, that they add value to each other's lives and we add value to the lives of the natural environment and our collective futures. And for that, governance is critical. And so the Gelifu Mindfulness City, please visit the website, please visit the YouTube sites. The Gelifu Mindfulness City is a special administrative region, which means that the laws and the government of Bhutan will not apply to the city. This city will have independence in government, in lawmaking, and in its judicial systems. Now, if we are co-creating, how will we define this special administrative region? And remember, the Gelifu Mindfulness City is the only special administrative region that has been established deliberately. The other special administrative regions are generally a legacy of colonialism, or it's designed because and over the larger, the mother country, that wants to incorporate the city into their territory and yet faces difficulty. And this is the easiest way out. But here, the mother country, Bhutan, is earmarking a part of the country as a special administrative region. Again, I repeat, with an independent government, with independence in lawmaking, with an independent judiciary. So the question is, how will we design all this? And this is where all of you are important. Baukultur is important, UN Habitat is important, and the private sector. We need investors to come in and feel inspired to undertake this journey together.
Fantastic. Thank you. Really, really fascinating. And I think that probably brings us on to the question that I wanted to ask you, Oliver, which is that high quality Baukultur sometimes perceived to be optional or perceived to be a luxury or perceived to be something that we can't afford. How is the Alliance really addressing this question of accessibility and value for money?
It's an important point, because indeed often high quality and high quality Baukultur is considered something expensive or even an additional complication, something that you have to do more in an already quite challenging context. And we know that this is not true. And what we do for convincing is that we show examples that prove somehow that if you have intelligent projects that are integrating these requests from the very beginning, like Bhutan and the Prime Minister said so, that you're integrating these principles from the very beginning, then you will see that you will have better results for everybody, better results for the community, but also for the private sector. But it is clear that also high quality Baukultur has to make economic sense if it wants to be successful. But we have to create values for everybody and not just for a certain group. And this is how we try to convince. And I'm also sure that once this way of thinking, these principles, and we do have really implemented examples for that, then also the private sector and the market will very quickly realize that they have a big advantage in considering these principles and these quality principles and go forward. Now in our alliance, we have already a big number of members that have understood that and that are working for that. And this is a big force, because we do have private sector, public and civil society advocating for this. So to me, it's a question of time that these principles will be no longer something nice to have, but an urgent need that is recognized.
Okay, lovely. Well, this is perhaps a good time for us to bring in one of those Alliance members. So I'd like to go now to Yoon Hong Hu from GS E&C to talk to us a little bit about how you're using modern methods of construction to have this really good balance between affordability and quality.
Hello, I'm Yoon Hong Ho from GS Engineering and Construction. I'm from Korea. thank you for the question. We GS Construction, we supply about 30,000 units, housing units in Korea, and we do many residential projects overseas. And modular construction is one of our focus area to now the modular construction over the world is expanding, so we are trying to focus on those areas. And over the past years, we have delivered many projects and over the world, and single-family, high-rise buildings, and commercial and mixed residential. And one of the key benefits we experienced about modular construction is the significant boost in sustainability, profitability, efficiency, and it helps us complete projects faster and reduce budgets. So, but more importantly is it reduce the negative impact on surrounding communities. So the modular construction minimizes the amount of work and labor, so on site, and number of vehicle deliveries. So, but there's still lots of work for us to do, and we truly believe modular construction will be our future. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So perhaps moving on from that in terms of how we build these things in an affordable way, I think there's a really important thing that's coming through today about why we're building and what we're building for and what we're trying to achieve. And that's really critical in getting some of these projects moving forward. So I'd like to go now to Philip Halen from Ackerman Van Haren to talk about the importance of narrative and storytelling. And I think we've had a masterclass on that this morning already from His Excellency, but love to hear your view on that.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, I feel very uncomfortable talking about storytelling after your presentation. So forgive me if I'm not at the same level, but let me just explain something. I was in public office for more than 25 years, and then 10 years ago moved to the private sector. I'm from Antwerp. Antwerp is a city with a port, and on the northern part of the city we have what we would call docklands. Now, about 20 years ago, the idea of the city administration, of which I was part, was let's redevelop it. And like many times, a lot of redevelopers have the ideas to go and find the most amazing architects, put beautiful buildings, make them sustainable and everything. But in the end, and that was what we did with the whole team, there was a lack of storytelling. And I think it is vital that if you develop our cities for the future, there has to be a kind of, call it storytelling as a key enabler for urban redevelopment. You have to connect with the people that are living there and with the people you want to attract. You have to bring in stepping stones, cultural stepping stones, to make sure that you're not building something where people buy a place because they think it's a good investment, but that you create a space where generations afterwards will still go to because of a museum, because of archives, because of a hospital, because of green areas and all of that. And so storytelling, connecting people before you start developing is crucial. I've seen in my own city another example where in recent years we did wonderful redevelopment, but only with very expensive housing areas, and where there is nothing, where in the evening you don't want to go. Not because it's unsafe, because there's just no fun. And that's why I think, as you did, Your Excellency, taking us on your way in rethinking how a city should look like is so fundamental. And I'm very happy to be part of the Alliance, and that now with the company we are part of it. And I think we need more Baukultur engagements during the year, and not only at the Davos World Economic Forum. So if we could continue this on more places on this little planet, I think it would make it better. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, we'll perhaps come back to that at the end of the session. this morning. So I think the storytelling and the vision are really important, and all of this is about the future of our cities, and in that, children and young people are really important. So we wanted to move on to Carla. Do we have Carla here from UNICEF to talk about how bringing that perspective of children and young people is important?
So good morning. Thank you, Excellency. I arrived a little bit late and I had a migraine this morning. So I took the pills and waited to feel better. And when I was hearing you speak of Bhutan, that's where I need to go to rest. But it links well with the types of pressures and the environment we live in and we work in that triggers also all kinds of non-communicable diseases. But putting that aside, so I represent UNICEF and my work is with the global private sector engagement. And listening to you, and this is a deep bench of panelists, thank you for your interventions. I wanted to share with you that UNICEF in 1996 launched a global initiative that is called Child Friendly Cities Initiative. And more than 3,000 municipalities have engaged in that, working on making every city child-friendly. And this is critical, especially today when we see all the needs in terms of disability and other specific needs that children may have, whether it's in a refugee camp, you were mentioning armed conflicts, or in a natural disaster. How do we collectively build safe spaces, safe playing spaces for children, whether we're in a high-income country or in a low or middle-income country, whether we're going through an emergency or a natural disaster. And maybe what I would like to ask you is, in the design, architectural, urban planning, academia, in all this design thinking about the future of our cities and how we feel in them, are you thinking of integrating in this holistic approach a child-sensitive lens so that our cities are child-friendly?
That's a fantastic question. Does anybody on the panel here want to answer that one?
Yeah. Thank you, Carla. What I have been saying a lot is that, and I would like to address the issues of slums, right? I said 1 billion plus people, according to the statistics that we have, are living in slums. We're still working on improving these numbers because these are collections from statistic offices, but we have other alternatives today, like geospatial images and so on. So to make sure that to understand where we are in terms of achieving SDG 11.1. But my point here is that we cannot have another generation of children being born in slums. Stop. That's the basis, because you can do your work, exhaustively. You never get there if children don't have roofs over their heads. They won't stay at school, they won't stay healthy, they won't develop as human beings. So for me, children are at the core of what we are proposing to be the focus of the action of UN Habitat.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, I'm sure we could talk about this a
very,
lot.
Very quickly. Learn from our past. We must celebrate our past. Live in the present. Be in the present. Be mindful. But build for the future. What is the future? It's not us, it's our children. And if what we build today is not friendly for our children, is not sufficient for our children, then we are not building for the future. We are building for the present. And how on earth can we build for the present? It's just not possible.
I think you've just done my summing up for me, so I don't think I can top what you've just said, but I really want to thank the panel here and the people on the floor for some fantastic comments. I mean, I think if we move all of our work and our projects into building for the future and the concept of adding value to other people's lives, that would make a huge difference for us. So I'm sure we could talk a lot longer this morning on all of these topics, but we've come to the point where we're going to wrap up. So I'm delighted to invite Carlo Ratti to the stage. He's the director of MIT City Lab and the curator of the Venice Biennale, just to give some closing thoughts and tell us about what's next. Carlo.
Right. Good morning, thank you everybody. So I just want to say we are curating the Venice Biennale. There's going to be the next Baukultur event in Venice, actually the opening of the Biennale, the opening is on the 10th of May this year. And I want to add one point to all the ones that were mentioned. So we think really Baukultur is crucial, and there's a key important element about Baukultur that we'll explore in Venice, and I think is behind a lot of the things that were mentioned. You know, when you look at where architecture starts, there's a beautiful treaty by a guy called Abbé Loger. Every architecture student knows it, about, you know, what he talks about the primitive architecture, primitive hut. And the point is that architecture starts when climate is against us. What he says is, you know, thousands of years ago, when we had to protect ourselves, to find shelter in the forest, we take some branches and architecture starts there, with some branches protecting us from the environment. And so today, when climate is becoming more extreme, and we heard it, you know, we think about what happened in Los Angeles, think about Valencia, think about many other things happening today. At Davos this year, I heard that, you know, out of the statistics, you know, if you take, in the past 10 years, we had the hottest year, we had the 2 hottest years, we had 10 hottest years in human history, in recent human history. And so architecture then need to play a big role. And Baukultur is really one way to start from climate, a climate that may become more extreme, more difficult, and bring that into the built environment. So that is what we're going to explore at the Venice Biennale, starting for 6 months, starting on the 10th of May this year. And that's what we want to continue doing together with Baukultur. So thanks for a very exciting panel.
Lovely, thank you.
So I want to thank you all for joining us this morning. We'll wrap up here. If you're not part of the Davos Baukultur Alliance already, if you're watching online, we encourage you to go to davosalliance.org, get more involved. This is just the start of a year of a lot of different activities to drive forward change. If you're here in the room, we encourage you to network amongst your peers, and really looking forward to doing more with you in the days, weeks, and months ahead. So thank you.